Hello, this is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Before I hop in today, I just want to encourage you. Next week, I'm going to have Justin Roethlingshofer on the podcast. His book is coming out this coming week, and we're going to do have a really good conversation in regards to your health and your business. And I think you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And if you're a client of ours and you listen, there is the opportunity to be able to get his book for free. And I've already paid for it and willing to send it out to you. Just encourage you to listen to the podcast and let you know as far as how to receive a copy of it. So please consider listening in this coming week and when we send out the podcast. On today's podcast, we're going to talk a little bit about communication and culture. And a lot of this stemmed from a couple weeks ago in my accounting firm. Ended up in a situation, and all of us as business owners have ended up here. If we have a team, we end up in a situation to where it's the busiest time of our year. We have a lot going on. We're short-staffed. We feel like efficiency, organization isn't there. There may be health issues, personal issues. Just kind of life is happening to us. And we reached to the point of frustration. And I think probably a couple weeks ago, I had reached a point of frustration inside the business to a level that ended up becoming, maybe for lack of a better word, a little bit unhinged. Okay, I became extremely frustrated, and usually I'm relatively guarded with my tongue and the things that I say. But when it got progressively through this week, I ended up getting more and more frustrated, and it ended up my communication. It wasn't that I had stopped communicating. It's just that I ended up in a position to where I started communicating poorly, and if anything, actually in a very negative manner. So my communication had become one where I literally started complaining. I started to be condescending, and I'm a very sarcastic person, so condescension sometimes comes naturally. It's kind of an easy thing to do sometimes, but it really ended up in a position to where I was not very happy at all with the way that I was performing under pressure. And of course, as business owners, it's the role we are to play. We are the ones that are supposed to to shoulder that heavy burden, and we are the ones that are supposed to be leading our team, and we should be leading in this area of communicating. And I was leading in the area of communicating, but I was leading in the area of communicating in a very poor, and if I must say, even in a bad way, and in a very negative way. And which isn't at all the nature normally of the culture here, the culture of the team. I have a very positive, upbeat, I would say very happy, jovial type of a team. But stress happens, pressure happens, and really, we end up getting stress tested as business owners, and then we find out really kind of what's inside of us when we get squeezed. And what I found out during the course of this week when getting squeezed is that there was a lot of kind of bad things coming out, and a lot of it was because of my mindset, my lack of preparation, and my inability, and my just simply not taking ownership in this particular area. So instead of normally as business owners, what we should be doing is looking for solutions, trying to find ways to improve the situation, I ended up resorting to venting. And venting generally does not resolve any sort of issues unless maybe you're talking to your therapist. I have been so kind of all this was going on. I ended up having a team meeting last Monday morning. As maybe in your business you do this too. We have kind of a very first thing that we start our week. We have a kind of a team meeting. It usually goes 30 minutes to an hour, and I began to talk a little bit about this topic of communication. And kind of first thing I had to do was kind of apologize to the team. I was very, transparent in the way that, I had talked. Actually had one of my team members that had gotten pretty upset with me, and rightfully so, in regards to the way that I'd handled some situations. So that was kind of the first step, kind of taking ownership of my poor communication, and then apologizing to the team. But the day before, which was a week ago yesterday, now I'm recording this on a Monday, so a week ago yesterday, I'm a Purdue alum, and the team had won the Sweet 16, their elite game, and they played in the Final Four over this last weekend, championship games this evening as I record this. But I was listening to the press conference, and this was really early on Monday morning. So I was up about 4 a.m. and I was listening to the press conferences from the night before, and the coach of Purdue was on there along with a couple of players, and they in the press conference I began to jot down notes because it was one line or a couple sentences given about communication and when times get tough, when things aren't going well. And in a sports analogy, I I enjoy sports, and so it kind of really hit home to me, and especially since being very emotional with Purdue, my alma mater, finally reaching the Final Four for the first time since I was about 4 years old. So it's pretty exciting. And during his press conference, a couple things pointed out. The first thing that was pointed out by the coach was talked about the humility of leadership, and he wasn't referring to himself as the coach, but referring to the leadership on the court. And he said, first of all, if we're going to be effective as a team, we have to start with humility, and it really starts with the kind of the team leaders. And it was one, and this and the other players that were in the press conference had agreed to this, and it kind of followed up with this on a little bit with talking about humility and leadership. But this is where, in regards to communication, I had jotted down. It kind of really hit home. And a line, and not exactly word for word, but something along the lines of this was said. So when shots aren't falling, we play harder on defense and step up in our communication with each other. And so they were going through, and there had been times, the games they had lost this year, certain things had not come together for them. They were not playing well. The guard play, there were a lot of turnovers, and they really had identified what were the issues that resulted in them losing games. And understanding as in most sports, that you're going to have seasons where you have one or more players just are not playing well, and but how are you going to push through that? And so the response to that was, when shots aren't falling, what do? We work on the other areas that we know we can do well, and then we never stop communicating. And so they step up the communication when things get more difficult, and it's positive communication, okay? And so but they stepped up that communication in the Final Four game on Saturday. I kind of saw this come into fruition. The team did not play well at all. They had a lot of turnovers. Their floor leader probably had the worst game of the year. The center, the star player, wasn't hitting his shots. They had quite a few turnovers. Their defense was they planned well to defend against him, so things were not coming together. But what I saw, especially as the game began to progress, I saw more and more communication, especially when the ball would go out of bounds. Before they passed the ball in, they would take a moment and they would communicate, make sure that they were all on the same page. And you began to see through that communication that even though they weren't shooting all that well, they were hitting key shots when they needed to, but they weren't their offense. They had just a horrible offensive game. They knew through communication. They knew where the open shooter was going to be at. They understood that this is what we need to do to pick up maybe on help side defense. And so they began to really focus on the things that they could control, but it all started with communication, leaning into each other. How can they help each other? And so I thought that was pretty kind of timely for at least what I was going through at the time. And then I've been reading through a book on about the starting of the Lego company, and it's a fascinating book. I ended up picking up. I was traveling this last year and saw it, and someplace I was at, ended up picking up the book, and really enjoying the book. And their very first kind of their person that eventually become their HR director, and he had talked about the original owner of the business and their process. And this kind of really goes against the grain, most of what we think about in business in kind of in more modern times. Now, this isn't like ancient, but obviously we're going back a ways. And the person that eventually became their first HR personnel director had written this about the owner. Said, on Monday, we talked about what we had to do before Friday, and then we did it. And I know for our team here, and possibly for yours as well, you had that Monday morning team meeting and you're outlining what's going to happen or what needs to happen during the week. So on Monday, we talked about what we had to do before Friday, and this is a direct quote, and then we did it. We discussed things together, we stuck together, and the tasks were accomplished along the way without too much red tape. We communicated almost completely without organization, bureaucracy, or paper. So the company had grown from being a very small operation to being a very massive operation, primarily because of communication. And a little bit later on in the book, this thought was mentioned, and I kind of took it and kind of added on to a little bit. But it said a business owner, so what I jotted down here is a business owner can communicate concrete guidelines that people must conform to. And every business needs some of that. You kind of have these guidelines, kind of those expectation things that you have to do. Okay, but we're kind of going beyond that a little bit. And so a business owner can communicate concrete guidelines that people must conform to, or can use proposals to start conversations. And so when addressing, as a business owner, I know that I don't have all the answers. I know that for most of the time, the answers will lie within the team when dealing with the client, because they're the ones going to work most closely with the client. And so instead of me, kind of hearing, what a problem is, just coming out with, this is the way that it has to happen, or this is the way that the direction the business has to go, that type of thing, running kind of more of an autocratic communication style, but to have one that is more collaborative. And so in the case of Lego, they had used what he called proposals, or basically bringing the problem, bringing the ideas together with pockets or parts of the team, and then collaborating about it. And so to really kind of get that buy-in. So getting the buy-in, but really to kind of do a few things. First of all, when you have that type of communication with your team, it really does help promote curiosity, help promote innovation, and of course, collaboration. So instead of having an autocratic style of leadership, that is one that you end up moving to a place of collaborating. And so kind of going through and end up coming with just a few takeaways as I went through over this and then what had happened inside of our business over the last few weeks. And one thing I learned, communicating with complaining will cripple the culture. And I began to see this. I saw is that the more that I complained, the more I heard my team complaining. And so I know that my communication style is the one that's going to take the lead in the way that the rest of the team communicates. Now, I don't have a huge team. I have, about 10 people on the team in its entirety. And so I don't have a very large team, local. I do have some remote employees, but so it's kind of one of those things that as I lead with communication, that's the way that the team's going to end up leading with communication. So if I'm complaining, it's going to trickle down. The team's going to start complaining. Okay, so communicating with complaining will cripple your culture. It will lead to a culture of individuals instead of owning, they'll end up simply complaining or deflecting or doing anything besides taking ownership and working in areas to try to find to improve. Most of the time, when it's complaining, it's a situation to where we no longer want to take ownership of a problem and simply just throw it someplace else. Okay, so complaining is almost kind of a way of blaming someone else for a problem that either, first of all, we shouldn't even be talking about, or secondly, is a situation to where we should be stepping in and resolving, not simply just griping about it. Okay, and this is true whether you're dealing with an issue, a client issue, or even dealing with team members. We have to be very careful as business owners not to be critical about a team member to another team member, because this will also result in a crippling of the culture. So communicating with criticism or condescension, and this is where I kind of lean sometimes more toward, and that is to be condescending just because of kind of a lot of my upbringing, just very sarcastic and kind of a condescending type culture that I grew up in. But communicating with criticism or condescension will lead to a culture of contention. And a bad culture can lead employees attacking each other, and many times they're going after the weakest link in the chain. And so when they start complaining, they kind of go after the person that is kind of the weakest link in the chain, instead of understanding that, if we're going to move forward as a team, we need that weakest link as strong as it possibly can be, maybe even sometimes have to kind of pull them along a little bit. And so, but if we don't resolve that, if we are condescending, if we're blaming, if we're complaining and doing this type of thing, that the weakest links in the chain will end up coming apart, and the organization will fall apart as well. And even beyond that, you're going to end up with a culture where there is no innovation, there is no collaboration. You end up with your employees kind of feeling siloed, not being able to lean into each other to try to help resolve problems, or even worse yet, not being able to come to you or me as business owners and lean into us for problems. We're going to look at them and either just kind of deflect, we're going to blame someone else, we're going to complain about the problem, but we're not going to work together to find good solutions to the problem, and ultimately who suffers? The people that we're trying to serve. We're trying to serve each other, that's going to fall apart. We're definitely not going to be able to serve our clients well either. So ultimately, what do we want to do? We want to have a culture of communication with collaboration. So that way we end up with a culture of community. And so if we have a communication style that's really one that is collaborative, then we're going to end up with a culture of a strong community. We're going to have a strong community culture inside of our businesses. And this will help to bring along those who may need assistance inside the business. So as a team, we're all kind of pulling on the same rope. We're communicating with each other, and then an organization with a culture that that freely people can ask for help, lean into others' ideas to help resolve problems, come up with creative solutions to resolve problems or innovative ideas to push the business forward, whether that's increasing profit or expanding impact, wherever you're at in your business cycle. So just a few thoughts today on communication, most of them falling out from coming away from some of the mistakes that I've made inside the business in recent weeks, and then really trying to make a conscious effort to find ways to improve and also help the team as a whole as we move through what's ultimately kind of the busiest time of our year at the firm level. This is Josh Belk with the Belk on Business podcast. Thank you for taking a few moments to listen in. Once again, please tune in next week. Take a listen. I think you'll get a lot of help, and of course, there will be the opportunity to be able to get the gentleman's book as well. So have a wonderful week. Look forward to chatting with you again next week.